Good afternoon. This is David Unsworth, host of the Pan Am Post English podcast. The collapse of democracy in Venezuela under the dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro has imperiled access to food and medicine for millions of Venezuelans. Venezuela's military, which is closely aligned with Nicolas Maduro, controls the importation and distribution of medicines. Now Venezuela is on the brink of a malaria crisis. The lethal tropical disease was eradicated in Venezuela in 1961, even before the United States, and this was certified by the World Health Organization. But now it's reappearing throughout the country, particularly in Bolivar state. In an interview with Caracas Chronicles last September, former Venezuelan Minister of Health Dr. Jose Felix Oletta predicted that the year would see over 200,000 cases of malaria. 15 of Venezuela's 23 states have now reported malaria. Venezuela's pharmaceutical industry is unable to import raw materials to manufacture the medicines. So the country must import everything needed in the healthcare field. Government supporters can get treatment at the military's network of private hospitals. Public hospitals, however, routinely lack all medical supplies, and malaria medication in particular. What is the solution for the emerging Venezuelan malaria crisis? And what can be done to eradicate the disease once more? What we're seeing today in Venezuela is censorship of official statistics. In May of 2017, May of this year, Health Minister Antonieta Caporale published statistics on the malaria epidemic, and Nicolas Maduro promptly fired her. These statistics showed over 240,000 cases of malaria in 2016. That is up an astounding 76% from 2015. And what is the most troubling of all is that Alida predicts that 500,000 Venezuelans will contract malaria in 2017. Now, what is driving this? Obviously, the economy in Venezuela is in shambles. Corruption and violent crime is rampant. The typical worker in Venezuela is now earning not even $1 a day, and the greatest joke of all is that their currency is called the Bolivar Fuerte, the strong Bolivar. It really should be called the weak Bolivar. I mean, Venezuela has by a light year the highest rate of inflation in the world, and people just cannot afford to buy anything in Venezuela, and much less food and medicine. The key component in the rise of malaria in Venezuela is illegal gold mining. Gold, of course, is a commodity that long has been able to hold its value, so people are leaving blue-collar and even white-collar jobs, even jobs working in government ministries, and going to Venezuela's east, mainly the sprawling jungle state of Bolivar, which is Venezuela's largest by area. It's a state that straddles the border of Brazil and Guyana, and they are illegally mining gold in watery pits that are perfect for the spread of mosquitoes. And unfortunately, these are very often the species of mosquitoes that spread the most deadly form of the parasite that causes malaria. In the 1990s, before Hugo Chavez took power in 1999, the disease was under control in Venezuela. When Nicolas Maduro is asked about it, in typical fashion, he just continues to repeat a mantra. Venezuela has the best healthcare in Latin America. Venezuela has the best healthcare in Latin America. He is taking, for the Venezuelan military and for his supporters, all of the medical supplies. At the Venezuelan military hospitals, you can get treatment for Latin America, but the rest of the 90% of Venezuelans cannot get treatment. Last year in 2016, 200 people were estimated to have died due to malaria. and that number is only going to increase in 2017. God only knows how high it's going to rise. The biggest problem now is that these miners who are traveling from all over Venezuela, heading to the east, and they're making far more money than they could at their previous jobs. But when they return to their hometowns, to urban population centers, they're spreading the disease with them. So this is an extremely serious problem. And the government of Nicolas Maduro is completely ill-equipped to tackle this issue. I mean, they are in denial that this exists, and of course they're not going to take any of the blame for the collapse of the economy and for the collapse of healthcare and for the fact that the vast majority of Venezuelans are not getting 3 meals a day. The government has used food and medicine for political purposes for the duration of the Maduro and Chavez regimes. They'll dispense food and medicine to their supporters and deny them to government opponents. And the healthcare infrastructure in Venezuela is a complete and utter disaster. So a government doctor was interviewed, and she said, well, the problem is that people aren't coming in early enough to get treatment. That's all well and good, but it's almost impossible to find anti-malaria drugs now in Venezuela. Right now, anti-malaria pills are being traded for 1.5 grams or 2 grams of gold at these illegal gold mining sites in eastern Venezuela. And what's happening is that for the people who can't access real drugs, they're resorting to folk remedies. Particularly, they're brewing bark of the cinchona tree and making a tea out of that. And that provides certain antiseptic qualities. Why does Venezuela still have a few hardcore allies left in its camp? Mainly Evo Morales in Bolivia, Raúl Castro in Cuba, and Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. The situation right now really is this. Maduro could care less about the Venezuelan people, and even further less about the Venezuelan people who aren't supporting him. And at this point, it's very likely to be around 80 to 90% of the country that does not support the government. So these Venezuelans are going to die. There's absolutely no way around it. And Dr. Oletta, who is the former health minister of Venezuela, has said that the situation is just atrocious with regard to the lack of medicines in these hospitals. And the health ministry and President Nicolas Maduro, if they can't even admit there is a problem in the first place, how can they try to fight the problem? It's utterly just insane. And as Dr. Alida points out, Maduro and his family aren't going to a public hospital. They would never go to a public hospital. The public hospitals don't have the most basic of supplies. They don't have the most basic medicines. They don't have space for their patients. Venezuela's healthcare system is completely broken. And it is only going to get worse. As Oleta noted, this is the great irony here is that this is supposedly a socialist nation, a socialist government where healthcare is viewed as a fundamental right. I certainly don't agree that healthcare is a fundamental right. I believe that the free market should control healthcare, that the free market has the best solutions for healthcare. But Oleta notes, Oleta was Minister of Healthcare from 1997 to 1999, and he noted during that period of time, Venezuela spent $4 billion a year on its nationwide network of clinics and hospitals. Who even knows what spending is per year now? I mean, the Venezuelan currency is so deflated, and the black market exchange rate is so unfavorable. The only one who controls access to dollars, which are the only thing that can be used to import anything. I mean, you can't import anything with bolívares fuertes. It's just impossible. It's a worthless currency. If you have not been to Venezuela, you can't understand what this situation is like. But it really is. It's a unique situation in the context not just of Latin America, but of the world. And the government controls who can get access to dollars. So it is a situation where the government is literally killing people that don't support them. I mean, the only thing that Nicolas Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, Tarek El Assami care about at this moment is keeping themselves in power. They are heavily involved in drug trafficking on a massive scale. They're extremely corrupt. They have numerous human rights violations that they're facing down the road, and they know that there is no way out for them. They are never going to relinquish power through any democratic means. So the only way they're leaving office is dead or going to jail. Dr. Alida is practicing currently at the Hospital Universitario at the Central University of Venezuela, and he notes it was once one of the greatest teaching hospitals, and students from all over South America would go to study there. Now he says that they are virtually unable to practice medicine. Here's what he has to say in the interview with Caracas Chronicles. The pharmacy doesn't have any medicine. They have no anti-malaria drugs. They have no child antibiotics. There is no anti-convulsion medicine for epilepsy patients. It's the same thing with other patients who need special treatment. We don't have orthoscopes for patients who need surgery. We have to open them up like we did decades ago. With breast cancer surgery, we used to just take out the tumors. Now we take out the whole breast. We don't have the X-ray machines to look at patients' problems. Now we don't have the proper treatment for particular patients. We have to treat patients with what medicine and equipment we have. It may not be the proper medicine at that moment, but it's all we have. So there really is only one solution to the malaria epidemic. Maduro needs to be forced out of power, and Venezuela needs to dollarize its economy. We keep reading. It's been just a long, slow, and steady collapse for the 3 years of Maduro's rule. It's been a complete and utter disaster. He is supported by virtually no one in the country except the people that he is personally paying in cash or food or medicine and the military. He's ruined a nation of 30 million people. And getting anti-malarial drugs to Venezuela as it stands now is a needed and important first step, but that is not going to solve the problem. What is really going to solve the problem here is a regime change, and the first thing that a new regime in Venezuela is going to have to do is dollarize the economy. And history clearly demonstrates that that is an enormously positive step for a country to take. It was the best thing that ever happened to Ecuador. Ecuador was in complete and utter financial ruin through all the 90s. Then they adopted the dollar. Economic stability followed. Even Rafael Correa, who's one of the most anti-American Latin American leaders out there, said that Ecuador can't abandon the dollar. He said he'd like to, but it's not feasible. And Panama, one of the greatest economic success stories in the Americas, also dollarized. I mean, there is no alternative. The only reason that Venezuela has already not dollarized is because it keeps Maduro in power. It helps to keep Maduro in power. When he controls the access to dollars, he controls the gateways for all goods coming into Venezuela, and more than anything now, that is food and medicine. It's not, no one in Venezuela is buying luxury items anymore. No one is getting cars and flat screen TVs. We're talking the most basic essentials now are what is needed, food and medicine. And the Maduro regime completely controls that. And they really don't care. They don't want, first of all, they don't want the international community to know about the scope of the malaria epidemic. They don't want people to know. Hundreds, if not thousands of people are going to die this year in 2017 from the malaria epidemic. But we may not know about it. And if any government minister tries to report it, they will be fired or worse, jailed. And who knows, with Maduro now controlling the entire country, he could pass a law that makes it illegal to report on malaria statistics and jail anyone who says, oh, in the year 2017, there were 1,372 deaths from malaria. So, at the end of the day, we need to pay attention to this crisis. The international community needs to pay attention to this crisis. The United Nations and the World Health Organization are working on getting anti-malaria medicines distributed throughout the country, but that is really just a band-aid. The real solution here is that economically Venezuela needs to return to market-based solutions. Those are what really works. We've seen socialist solutions, they do not work. Everything that Maduro has done has been a disaster, and all Venezuelans are worse off now than they were before Chavez. So it is high time for Maduro to go, and it is high time for Venezuela to dollarize its economy. This has been David Unsworth with the Pan Am Post. Thank you very much for listening, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.